Imagine living in a city where the ground beneath you is slipping away and the ocean is knocking at your door. Welcome to Jakarta, Indonesia's billion-dollar capital, which is slowly sinking into the ocean. Soon enough, millions of people could be left homeless because of it. But an $80 billion mega wall may be Jakarta's last hope. How practical is this wall, and could Indonesia actually build it before it's too late? Stay tuned as we dive deeper into this mystery. Jakarta, a sinking city. It's not like Jakarta is losing itself to the ocean bit by bit. It's actually a rushed catastrophe because the government only has until 2050 to figure out how to solve this problem. And by 2050, 95% of the city of Jakarta will be completely drowned in the ocean. Northern Jakarta is already seeing a major water rise, flooding, and mass displacement. In the last 10 years, North Jakarta has already gone 25 centimeters underwater. To combat this, the government is throwing everything it has at the problem, including a massive seawall. The question remains, will it be enough? So Jakarta is sinking at an unbelievable speed, and it has given headaches to even ecologists and geologists. But the ocean might not be the only thing responsible for Jakarta's doom. One of the major reasons why Jakarta is on the verge of drowning is excessive extraction of groundwater. The city's water supply infrastructure is so bad that only 60% of its people have access to proper water, while the other 40% rely on underground water for everything. When water is constantly being pumped out of the ground, it leaves empty spaces. Over time, the weight of the buildings and infrastructure above causes the spaces to collapse, leading to the ground sinking. If you've been to Jakarta, I know you were starstruck by those massive skyscrapers, malls, and roads. Well, they do weigh a lot, and that's just making the sinking process worse. So imagine that every drop you pump out of the ground makes your city sink a little more. It's a recipe for disaster. But the Jakarta government has seemingly figured out the big solution to end this sinking problem, at least for now. The Great Garuda Wall. To keep the ocean from swallowing Jakarta whole, the government had the bright idea to build a massive seawall. But not just any wall, though. This one is shaped like a giant Garuda, the mythical bird from Indonesian folklore, stretching 32 kilometers across Jakarta Bay. The idea is to create a double-layered defense system. The outer seawall would be this massive structure in the ocean, while inner walls would surround the city's coastal areas. Between these two walls, a fancy new waterfront city will be built. The outer wall will be made of concrete and other sturdy materials so it can stop the floods, while the inner seawall will protect the city from tidal flood, and that's already a huge problem. The reclaimed land between these two walls will be developed into a new urban zone, featuring residential, commercial, and public hubs. The idea is to just let the city of Jakarta breathe a little by creating a whole new district right in front of it. Just picture Dubai's Palm Jumeirah. The Indonesian government is trying to do something similar with its Great Garuda project, but at a much larger scale because the risk here is higher. Like any other project of this scale, the Great Garuda Wall is also split into different phases. So in the first phase, they're only going to add artificial islands to act as water buffers. This would give them an idea of whether their plan is actually good enough or it's sinking badly. This is also the phase where they'll be reinforcing the current wall and adding water treatment plants as a priority. Once the artificial islands are stable, they'll move to Phase B, where they'll actually be building the walls and making sure they're really sturdy. But this is going to be very expensive and challenging because they'll be using a lot of new engineering techniques and technology that has never been used before. It's definitely a risk, and things could go seriously wrong any minute. In Phase C, they'll build the actual city, including buildings and everything else. But that will only happen if they reach Phase C. Another seawall in the east is also expected to be built, and this Garuda city will have its own airport and seaport. So you can just see how the government isn't just building a new wall, it's actually creating an entirely new city and tourist destination to boost its economy. Issues with the Garuda project. With this new city being built, the government is also planning on improving its water management system by building new reservoirs that store rainwater and manage the flow of water during high tides. To some extent, this could solve Jakarta's water pumping problem, but only if the government actually executes this plan successfully. And I doubt that millions of people would stop pumping underground water just like that. But there's a pickle. The initial estimate for this Great Garuda project was around $40 billion, but this has since gone up, and some researchers have suggested that it's going to take at least $80 billion to actually build this whole thing. Also, $80 billion isn't loose change you can just find in your pockets, and that's only a rough estimate. Taking out this massive budget from the treasury isn't going to be a walk in the park for the government. Then there's the environmental impact, because building a seawall means a lot of dredging. It would basically destroy the marine ecosystem in the area. And don't even get me started on the massive pollution it's going to cause. Jakarta is already struggling with pollution, and this new city would only add to the problem. To make things worse, building this great Garuda city will also displace thousands of people living in the coastal areas. And that's only the tip of this giant iceberg. Displaced people will have to be moved somewhere, which is going to cost millions of dollars to the government, and if this wall doesn't do what it's promising to do, they'll actually have to spend more money on an entirely new project, so it's not a sure-shot thing. With so much at risk, you'd think, well, at least this wall would solve the sinking problem. Yes and no. Look, on paper it sounds like a great plan, but in reality, seawalls don't always solve the problem, they just delay it. If Jakarta residents continue to pump water from the ground, the city will still keep sinking. The wall would only keep the ocean water at bay for a while, but the ground would still be going further down every year. This project could leave Jakarta with a really expensive wall, but the city behind it would still be doomed. The water being pumped from the ground is the main reason that the city is sinking, but that issue isn't directly being solved by this walled city. And let's just think for a second. The Indonesian government is going to spend nearly $80 billion, which is more than the total budget of some countries. They're using all this money to build a walled city and solve the sinking problem, but they're not really solving the problem. So what exactly is the point of this city? People still believe that the benefits of Garuda City are way too much, and the drawbacks don't even come close to them. So people should just cave in and let this city be built. But even a lot of local people are against this wall because the people who'll suffer the most because of it are the locals of Jakarta. The benefits of Great Garuda. Even though this wall doesn't really do what it's being made for, it's still going to be a golden boy for the Indonesian government. A lot like Palm Jumeirah, they're going to turn this into a holiday destination perfect for uber-rich and billionaires. So the government will most likely be minting billions at the expense of Jakarta. The wall isn't completely useless because it will surely bring a lot of economic growth to the area. It'll also help with the flooding problem, and who knows, the sinking might as well be solved because of this new barrier. For now, the government has given an ultimatum to complete this wall by 2027. But even in 2024, the project was massively delayed due to budget and opposition from local communities. So I assume it'll be further delayed. Do you think this multi-billion-dollar wall could actually solve Jakarta's problem? Drop a comment and let me know. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.